Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 3, Episode 25, Flight to the East, starring Gary Merrill as Ted and Patricia Cutt as Barbara. And this is a very, very poor episode, in my opinion, but not for the normal reasons why I generally think an episode is poor. A lot of times I complain that episodes don't have enough plot, they're padded, and they're dragged out. This episode actually needed more time to be effective. This episode tries to pack way too much into 25 minutes, in my opinion. It just feels like one big exposition scene after another. The order that the events are presented in is sometimes hard to follow. And the episode is just sequenced in a very odd way. It goes back between the past and present. And it sometimes comes across as confusing. There were parts of the episode I had to go back and watch again and try and figure out what was going on. And the whole thing just didn't work for me. Just not an enjoyable episode at all, in my opinion. So we start on a plane with a man named Ted. He's our main character. She's soon joined by Barbara, who's our other main character. And they talk, and we get a little bit of background information on both, which was fine, I guess. So Ted starts telling this story in flashbacks, which is the main theme of the episode. It turns out he was present at the trial of a man who was charged with being some kind of arms dealer and stealing some kind of diamonds or something like that. His name was Sasha. So we get more of the trial, and as things look worse and worse for him, we also meet an elderly man who turns out to be Sasha's father. And it also turns out that when Ted meets with these guys, he starts to believe that Sasha is innocent, or at least that's what the story leads us to believe at this point. Like I say, it's kind of all over the place. So, after the two have a conversation, Sasha brings up this guy named Arthur Smith, who may or may not exist. We're not really sure at this point, just like a lot of things are unclear in this episode. So we go back to the plane, as we'll go back and forth throughout the episode. Ted and Barbara are talking. We get another flashback where Ted gets fired for sticking up for Sasha, but could this all be part of a plan, or does Ted have good intentions? We're still not really sure. Like I said, this is all kind of confusing as it goes back and forth. So we go back to the present. We learned out that Sasha was hanged, and Ted tells Barbara he's been all over the world searching for this Arthur Smith guy. And Barbara seems really strangely totally interested in this, leading us to believe she might be more involved than was originally thought, although it was pretty obvious from the beginning of the episode that she was somehow more involved, at least in my opinion. So we go to another flashback where Ted meets Sasha's father again. And it turns out that the father blames Ted for getting Sasha killed, but Ted says he tries to help him. So anyway, the father, not having very good aim, tries to kill him with a knife and misses. He also tries to use a gun, but Ted attacks him and winds up killing him. I guess he's got better aim with a knife. Pretty convenient plot point there, I'm just saying. So at this point, we also learn that Ted is handcuffed to the man sitting next to him, an inspector. Why? Just another plot point. There's way too many insignificant plot points in this episode. This is never brought up again, basically. So at this point, we also learn that Barbara was employed by someone else. I think she's like the daughter of the man who was the lawyer in Sasha's case, even though this lawyer was never really established as important. Like I said, the episode just rushes through too many plot points to really be effective. It all just feels like hitting you over the head with exposition, and at this point I was really getting tired from trying to keep up with all this, honestly. So at this point we get another scene where Ted offers to help Sasha, to get half. He says, if you give me half the money, half the diamonds, I'll help you get off. But their plan doesn't really sound very convincing. It doesn't even sound like it'll work. So now we're getting, I guess, things from Barbara's point of view, as this version of the story makes Ted seem a lot more guilty that he's letting on. It makes him seem shady. There we get another flashback where Ted meets Sasha's father the same way he did before, only this time he threatens the elderly gentleman that he wants his money, and he winds up killing him. So now it makes Ted look guilty. So now we're really not sure which story to believe, and honestly, I didn't care at this point. Then we get the climax of the episode, which doesn't really work either. We get more exposition from Barbara. We should be building to a finale. Instead, we're still getting exposition on her past. I really didn't like the way this episode was structured. It turns out she knew this soldier somehow, and based on what he knew and based on the cigarette brand they've both been smoking, she knows that Ted is guilty, and we know that her side of the story is correct. But it seems like she's also going to testify against him. But based on the evidence she has, I'm not even sure that this would really work or hold up in any kind of court. But I guess you just kind of go with it. An unsatisfying ending for a very poor episode. Now, I do appreciate that they tried to do something different and kind of tell two stories in one, but it didn't work. The episode would have needed more time to flesh out the story and the characters, and this episode just kind of all over the place. So while I respect what they tried to do, the episode fails, in my opinion, and I'm going to give Flight to the East a 1.5 out of 5. I actually would have given this episode a 1, but because they at least tried to do something different, I'm going to give it a 1.5. But I do not recommend Flight to the East at all as an episode. I really can't think of many redeeming qualities of this one. So 1.5 out of 5 for Flight to the East, and as always, thank you very much for watching.